Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is David, and today I wanted to talk about this concept of being a generalist. And I'm treating this as if I was talking to my old self, which is what I'm trying to do with these videos, is just to treat this almost as a YouTube journal entry. And as if I was talking to my old self. And one thing I think I would really try to embrace or teach to my younger self is to just be okay with being a generalist and having multiple interests. I think right now we are living in a time where it has never been better and easier to become a generalist and have multiple interests and really explore your curiosities, people you find interesting, things you find interesting, subjects that you want to learn, and making a living out of it, or just having it as your work, having it as part of your life, and just being genuinely curious about things. And I think the reason why I had a hard time when I was younger about this is, we're always taught to just be the best at one single thing, Don't be a jack of all trades, but to instead just become the best at your craft. You can see that a lot for example, in Japanese culture, where it's frowned upon to have many interests, and because of that, they have great masters who, have just invested their time into one single thing, and it creates a lot of beautiful things. And now I'm saying this not as a way to say, hey, just, dabble in like a lot of things. There's a paradox to it. In a way, you want to focus on the things that interest you, and that could be many, many things, and obviously you can't do everything. There's also this notion that you're inherently good at just a few things. It would be lying to yourself if you said like, oh, I'm going to be doing this and this and this. And, I want to learn how to cook, and I want to learn how to do this. And I want to learn how to ride cars or pilot airplanes, and be an artist, to be a painter, be a writer, be a videographer, be a designer. Like, there's so many different things you might want to do. But in the beginning, just focus on a few things. It could be one or two, or just a few things that you're good at and that you like doing. But eventually, you will want to expand. And that's just if you're someone like me who is interested in many different things. But in the beginning, you have to just pick one. Just pick one thing, stick with it, and then see where it brings you. But really try to at least learn as much as you can in that one field, that one subject, maybe a subject you've been doing for a long time. But then eventually you will want to, grow and do other things. And that brings me to my idea that in today's world, becoming a generalist, in the broad sense of the word, is a superpower. Because if you're able to know many different things and make connections between them, that for me is the definition of a creative individual. If you're someone who's able to read up on this and talk to people about this, and being open-minded to so many different ideas and opinions, and being neutral about it. I think right now is like a world where a lot of people are just so stuck up in their ways, and they're so one-sided. That's what creates division, is that you think your ways are the right ways and the other people that you would disagree with are wrong. Eventually you realize we're all trying to say the same things in different ways because we're different people. But if you instead stepped out and decided to decide to learn about other people's point of view, and that takes curiosity. You have to be genuinely interested in others and what they have to say. And you ask questions and you try to understand what they really mean. And, if you take books, for example, to read a book that was written by someone else, it could be years ago, it could be today, it could be, decades or centuries ago, it takes a lot of curiosity. You have to be willing to say like, hey, this person has an interesting idea by the cover or the idea, or I heard about it, or, something drags me or invites me to read this book. And then to sit down and actually go through the ideas and through the words and really try to implement it to your life is a superpower. And you can apply this to so many things. And it doesn't need to be books. It could be by talking to people. It could be by asking them questions. It could be by, just consuming information, whether form or media. It could be audio. It could be visual. It could be in person. There's like so many ways to do that. But if you start doing that more, especially if you're creative, especially if you're a designer, an artist, someone who creates, or you define yourself as a creative person, and I would argue that everyone is creative in their own ways. That's another subject for something else, for another video maybe. But if you started to ask, what if, or not even what if, but just, what do they mean by that? Or, what is this? And then you just start asking, and then why? And you ask yourself why and why and why. And then you dive deep in those rabbit holes and you start teaching yourself about this and you start learning. If you're a creative, that is your muse. That is your inspiration. You start having ideas and then you want to share them with others, because you realize that what we all are doing in this world is we're just sharing ideas between each other. We're just, because if you read something that was created by someone and then you resonate with this, you can say to yourself, hey, I can do this too. I can have the same impact that this author I've never met. You can have an impact the same way that author had an impact on you, and then bring that to others in your own way. And you don't need to be smarter than anyone, because you realize it's like the Steve Jobs quote. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it's something around the world around you has been built by people no smarter than you are. We're all the same in terms of like obviously some have higher IQs, some have higher EQs, some are more extroverted, more introverted, but regardless of that, we all have something, or we all have at least unique stories and unique perspectives on things. And if you disagree with me on that, I will say like, I think this is true. I think everybody has something worthwhile sharing with others. You might think that you have nothing and like, oh no. And then that's where imposter syndrome comes from, I think, is not feeling competent or not feeling like you have a voice. That can also stem from your cultural background. I know, for example, in Asian countries, most Asian countries, not all of them, but most of them, it's normal to conform and to not have your own thoughts and to just follow what other people are doing. Don't stand out. You should just do what other people are doing. So I'm not going to go into that. That's a cultural thing. There are benefits to doing that sometimes. In certain situations, having too much of an opinion can be a bit extreme. But regardless of this, if I'm coming back to this idea that, if you're creative, if you're curious and you want to learn about other things, and then you read up on these things or you learn about these things, and then you make connection, that is your superpower as a generalist, or as a creative, as someone who has many, many interests in life. So today's video is about this. And I'll keep it short. I'll keep it around 30 minutes. But basically, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to talk about, is if you're someone who likes a lot of things, embrace it. don't be afraid to go outside your lane. And I will tie this a bit to education and how right now I think the way education is taught in schools and universities, I mean, that's a cliche. Everybody has an opinion on like education as a whole. And I'm not here to say like, don't go to school, I'm not gonna be that person who's like, oh, drop out, do this. Like, I think universities still have immense potential. I have met so many incredible people at MIT here since I joined in last September, and it has been a game changer in my life. I think differently, I act differently. The people I've met have inspired me to make these videos. So without these people that I've met at university, I would not be doing this right now. So, because ultimately, education is, or let's say we talk about the way universities operate right now. If you think about it, it's a place, a physical place, and now it's become physical and digital through like online courses. But most of the time, the real power comes from being in a physical space with people who are similar to you in some sense. If you chose a program, if you chose a discipline, chances are you have an interest in it. You decided to study psychology, or you decided to study journalism or design or engineering. You're maybe good at it, you're curious about it, or you like it. So being in a room with people who thought of these things with you or like you, and you're in this room with these people and you're learning from them, you're asking them questions, you're working with them, and that is how you learn. This is education, surrounding yourself with like your community of people so you can grow as your own individual. So in that sense, universities are a good thing. Now, if you debate, or if you bring up like, okay, the cost of universities, that's another subject. That's, especially if you talk about US universities. Like, I'm a Canadian international student, and in Canada, universities are pretty cheap, and here it's much more expensive. So it comes at a cost. Luckily, MIT is very generous and offers a lot of fellowships, scholarships, which pays for my tuition and my living expenses. And that's a luxury, that's a privilege. Not all universities are like this. But so that's another subject. If you can't afford it, maybe you want to educate yourself some other ways, or if you have to make decisions for yourself. Is this the right move? Can I afford this? Maybe you want to sacrifice, a few years where you're not making money, or you're not, you're kind of in debt. And then maybe you pay it off later if there's this opportunity cost that comes with life. But anyways, all this to say that in education, if you educate yourself and you choose and you find your people and you learn from them, that is the best thing you can do as a creative person. You can take from them and then implement it into your own life. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do. We're just sharing knowledge between each other. We're providing services. We're providing ideas. We're creating products. We make things, we share things, we sell them, we interact, we exchange, and we want to grow. That's just what humans do. So that's on one end. Embrace being a generalist if you're someone with many interests. But then again, if I go back to the idea that led to that is education, or any form of organization or institution will try to categorize you and put you in this box that you are doing this, you're this, you're a designer, you're an artist, you're, whatever, you're an engineer. And that can be dangerous sometimes because you identify only with this one thing. And as humans, we're much more complex than that, Like I said in my previous videos, we're fathers, we're mothers, we're siblings, we're brothers, we're we're caretakers, we're leaders, we're protectors. Depends what kind of character you are, right? We're all different. We all have different personality types. So we're very complex humans. And so the saying that you're just a designer or you're just this is kind of oversimplifying it. And so if there's one thing I would tell to myself if I was talking to my past self is to say, hey, don't be afraid to, young David was still doing that. He was still trying. He was pretty rebellious. Like in university, he would like occasionally skip classes and instead spend too much time on YouTube or taking courses here and there or starting businesses with friends and doing stupid stuff. So, I would say don't stop doing these things. But sometimes doubts would happen. I remember I would have some doubts and I would be like, maybe I should be doing this instead. Or, we're always overthinking our future. But I would say to him, hey, embrace your curiosity. If you think school is not giving you what you want out of life, go find it somewhere else. Go find it from people, mentors, people older than you, and it could. And when I say mentors, some people think like, it has to be an old man with a beard and like white hair that has like started multiple businesses and is an investor or whatever, and like gives you like wise wisdom. And it's not that. Mentor for me is someone who's just a few years above you, or is just in some level above you in some area of their life, and you want to be at that level, or you want to understand how they got there, and then you're learning from that person. But I noticed that you can mentors and mentee learn from each other, and you realize that when you start teaching to others too, when you start having people reach out to you for you to be their mentor, and then when that happens the first time, you realize like, hey, I am learning from that person because I'm teaching it to them. And so it's a reciprocal exchange. We learn from others, from our students, and students learn from teachers. And so I would say, if school is not giving you what you want out of life, out of your future ideal world or life, go seek it from others. Go seek it from other sources. Seek it from books. Seek it from other types of media, internet, real human beings that you've met at some event. And that in some sense you have to start talking to other people, like meet people outside at parties, at networking events. I don't like the word networking event, or just networking. I think it's flawed. Or in a way, networking is a bit too superficial. I think the best things I've learned from life are from people I've resonated at a deep level, where there was something else than just the transaction. It was, we agree on values, we agree on a bunch of different topics, and they become your friends, they become your partners, they become people you trust, and people you learn from. So anyways, all this to say, go outside. If school is not giving you, or if you're working and you feel like you're kind of like not learning a lot from your job, or you're not fulfilled, take time for yourself to just explore your curiosities. Just like try stuff, do stuff, and fail as much as you can. I thought about this the other day, and with imposter syndrome in MIT, you're like, I'm like lucky to be here. I don't deserve to be here. I am not an MIT student, or I'm not this. I got something, and we tend to look at the things we've achieved, we tend to not look at the things we've achieved or ponder on them and reflect on them. We usually ponder on our failures, and that drives us to just keep doing things. But I was thinking about the number of things I've failed at are so, like, there's a long list of things I failed at. A lot of unfinished projects, a lot of ideas in the air that just started and then flopped, started and then flopped. And, you know, you're throwing all these ideas out and you're doing all these things, and eventually one sticks and then you go with that. But in order to get there, you have to just try. And it's cliche to say, like, oh, you gotta fail, but it's so true. So that's another advice I would say. If you have a lot of interest, try as many things as you want or as you can. Don't be afraid to try something because you think it's a good idea, you know? Follow your gut instinct. Really, like, trust yourself and be like, let's do this, you know? Let's try this thing. And it might fail, but who cares? You know, you will learn so much. I think that's why the startup model is a really good one, because many startups fail, but the learning you get from it is incredible. The notion is, when you're in a startup and you're a small group of people who care about a mission or an idea and you work together on this thing, you do so many things. You're touching so many, you're wearing so many hats, you know. It's not like you have a department for this, a department for that. Usually you're touching a lot of things and there's a lot of overlap. And by doing that overlap, you learn a lot, and it's amazing. It's like the best training you can get. Join a startup. That's another advice I would say. Join a startup, and then but you can also learn from big organizations. 100%. Like you can learn, like, you know, good structures, like how big organization works. You understand what works, what doesn't work. I mean, you know, small organizations and big organizations, there's pros and cons to both of them. I haven't worked in that many big organizations, mostly small ones, which I think is why I'm more of a generalist than a specialist. But again, I'm sure there's pros and cons for them. And then, so this is what I would say to my past self, is to just try. Don't be afraid to try and fail and experiment and learn, and you will grow so much more. And this comes to, I think, the final point I want to make is it all comes down to creativity, what it means to be creative. And sometimes I like to drag the word design into creativity. Just because design for me, like, that's what I do. I'm a designer. I'm a trained architect. Or architect in training. I'm still doing my master's right now in architecture, but I've done my undergrad in that, and I've worked as a junior architect. I've worked as an urban designer, as a product designer. I've pretty much done design at, like, many different scales, from digital products, physical products, to buildings, and then cities. So that in itself is also a big learning experience I've had, is that at some point you notice the similarities, like what relates all of these together is design. You know, when you're a designer, you can be a designer for other things as well. You don't need to silo yourself into, like, oh, I'm just an industrial designer, I'm just this. A lot of the same principles apply to these. But if I go back to creativity as a whole, ultimately what it is storytelling. As simple as that. Right now, what I'm doing with this, like, and I'm posting these videos, is storytelling. I am just, you know, I have my phone that records me. I have my computer, and I'm sharing my thoughts in some form of media. You're consuming it, and then you're learning from it, and that is a creative endeavor. That is me being creative. Is just creating out there and posting it. And so storytelling is really the foundation of everything. And then obviously there are many ways to storytell. You know, if you're a painter, you tell your story through visuals, through imagery, through brush strokes, through color, through texture. It's 2D, it could be 3D if you're, let's say, a sculptor, or if you make architecture, if you're an architect, if you're an interior designer, if you're a filmmaker, it's through video, through animation, through, illustration. And it can even extend on to, I believe it goes on to even sciences. If you're a researcher, you are a creative person. You are researching things, you're connecting ideas together, coming up with a thesis, writing it, and then publishing it. And then, even if it's a scientific paper, like, you're creating something out of nothing. Hence, we are all creators. We are all creative people. We all try to make things out of nothing and use our brains but everything is a form of story. We're all sharing ideas, and we're all sharing what we believe in, what we think is good, how we can contribute to society. We're all trying to tell our story somehow. And a story about us, a story about the world, a story about how the world should be, our critique of the world. Some ideas, some like entertaining each other. There's so many forms of stories, So that's also something I would tell my past self, is understand that ultimately as a human, what you're doing is to just tell your story. And to do that, you really have to understand who you are, what you're good at, what you like doing, what you can share to the world, and that is it. And I think it's such a refreshing thing to say to yourself, and it calms you in a way, because instead of thinking of like what I should be doing, what am I good, like, instead of like doubting yourself out of fear because you don't really know where you stand on something or where you fit. We all think we need to fit somewhere. In society, we all think like, oh, I need to get this job, I need to be this, I need to do that. But if you step back and you say, hey, I am my own person, I have, I'm unique, I have my own interests, I have my perspective, I like doing this, but I also like doing that. And, do I really want to do this thing for the rest of my life? If you step back and you realize like, hey, what is it I really believe in? What is it do I truly want to share with the rest of the world? Or do I just want to make for the rest of my life and do for the rest of my life? If you start asking yourself that, it could be a bunch of things, but just start writing it down on like a piece of paper. It could be like a journal. I think journaling is a huge thing that helped me a lot when I was younger, and like I was anxious and afraid and overthinking on things. And to this day, I still like jot down notes. Once you start doing that and you realize like, hey, we're just trying to share ideas and be validated, and we want to be seen and we want to be heard, and we just want to be accepted by people and share cool stuff, so. But really, I think if you understand yourself better, it will just make the process so much easier, because you will just have more clarity on what you want to do and what you want to share with others. You need that clarity of mind to be able to be confident that, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it no matter what, because I love doing it and it's just so cool to do it, and then other things will come your way. You will manifest the life you want, because you will just attract people who resonate with what you do, and it will just make you happier. It will just make you more fulfilled, and you will live a better life, in my opinion. Not to sound like a guru, but that's what I've learned on my end, and I think that's what kind of led me to MIT and the people around me, and finally doing something that I would have dreamed of doing a few years ago, which is doing design for a living and studying design and working on amazing projects that I really believe in. And yeah, so that's it for my video. I'll keep this relatively short. It's still 32 minutes, but I'll keep it at that. And so really, if I wrap things up, my lesson for you is embrace being a generalist. If you have many interests, go for it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Learn as much as you can. It will make you a better creative, a better designer, a better artist, because you will learn so much more than if you just stick to one thing. You will have ideas, you will be inspired, you will feel alive, you will be curious about life. You will realize that you'll have so many realizations that you can't figure all of it out, but you can try to, in the striving and the journey of growth and the journey of self-development and the journey of understanding and empathizing with people and developing those new perspectives and those fresh ideas or just new lenses on life will just rejuvenate you and make you feel alive. We have limited time on earth, and so why not take that time to just try to understand the things around you. So on that note, I'll end this video. Have a good one, take care, and peace.